The Eagles are about to get even scarier, as their best defensive player looks set to get even better in 2025 because of one interesting detail about defensive coordinator Vic Fangio. And if this happens, then the entire defense will benefit. So in this video, I'll break that down, as well as go into the Eagles' most recent top 30 visits ahead of the NFL draft. Plus, why could Josh Uche be the Birds' best signing of free agency? And the Eagles also got some big news on their NFC East rivals. So we're going to talk about all that and more, starting right now. The main focus of the NFL offseason has clearly shifted, as with most of the big moves of free agency out of the way, now the main focus is on the NFL draft, and for the Eagles specifically, who they might add to help repeat as Super Bowl champions and also bolster their roster for years to come. And trust me, we've already gotten a bunch of rumors and updates regarding that, including predictions from draft experts and news on the Birds' ever so important top 30 visits so far, as that list continues to grow by the day. And I already talked about a ton of this news in my last video, but since then we got even more to talk about, as the Eagles have scheduled a few more top 30 visits, and we'll start with the offensive tackle from William & Mary, Charles Grant, who was projected to go on late day 2 or day 3, but is an interesting prospect given his size, standing at 6'5", and his impressive athletic ability, with him having very good mobility and quickness. Plus, he also plays with great leverage, he's got a physicality about him, and he's a smart player that has dominated during his college career. Now, that said, having gone to a small school, he hasn't exactly faced the greatest competition, but the physical tools and the potential is there. So as a mid to late round target for the Birds, Grant would definitely make sense as a guy to add depth to the offensive line in my opinion. But now moving on, the next top 30 visit for the Birds is going to be with Miami edge rusher Tyler Barron, who is expected to be a late round day 3 pick. And once again, he's an intriguing prospect considering that he's coming off clearly his best season after transferring to Miami in 2024, as not only was he a productive pass rusher, putting up 48 pressures and 250 rushes, but he's also shown that he has the ability to set the edge and be productive against the run as well. Plus, he's yet another guy that has good size and plays with physicality and relentless effort. Now, that said, the fact that he's 24 years old could be a downside, and he also has limitations in terms of his bend and bag of pass rushing moves, but again, Barron clearly has talent and the potential is there. So, as a day 3 target, this could definitely be a solid option. Plus, just one more note, that's now another edge rusher and another offensive lineman that the Birds have brought in on top 30 visits, so that should kind of show you where their priorities are going to lie as we get into the NFL draft in just under a month. But now moving on, the Eagles also have a meeting scheduled with Texas running back Jaydon Blue, and this is an interesting one for multiple reasons. One of those being that this guy literally just ran a sub 4.3 40-yard dash at his pro day on Tuesday, clocking in at 4.28 and 4.29 in his 2 attempts respectively, which is obviously insanely impressive and shows the type of breakaway speed that he brings to the running back position. And that's not the only positive trait that Blue has, as he's an elusive back with good footwork and the ability to make quick, hard cuts, plus he can also catch the ball out of the backfield pretty well. However, he also has plenty of weaknesses, including his ball security, pass protection, and at times his vision. Plus, he hasn't exactly had a big workload in his college career. However, Blue is a projected day 3 pick, and the potential is there, so if the Eagles could snag him in one of the later rounds for good value, that could definitely make some sense to add depth at the running back position. Now, obviously, the Eagles already have some good options there behind Saquon Barkley, namely Will Shipley and the new free agent addition Dillon, and while I really do like both these guys and think they have a ton of potential, there are some question marks with Dillon specifically, as he hasn't been super productive since 2022, and he's coming off a pretty serious neck injury that cost him the entire 2024 season and hampered him towards the end of 2023 as well. And his lack of recent production and injury issues have caused some Eagles fans to actually compare him to Rashaad Penny from a couple years ago, as of course the Birds signed him way back in 2023 to presumably help contribute at the running back position, as he was a guy that showed a lot of promise in his time in Seattle, with averages all the way up to over 6 yards per carry during his best seasons there, along with putting up over 700 yards rushing just 2 years before bringing him in. However, Penny also dealt with a lot of lower body injuries in his career, and unfortunately that all caught up with him in Philly, as he ended up barely making the roster, being a healthy scratch in pretty much every game, and in the 3 games that he did get to play in, he had just 11 carries for 33 yards, so ultimately that signing was a huge fail, and like I said, people have now looked at Dillon, his build, his situation, and his injury history, and drawn that comparison to Penny. Now, where I would say they differ is Penny had lower body injuries, while Dillon's has been a neck issue, which hopefully should be easier to recover from, but still, I do understand the skepticism with Dillon, and he's on a one-year deal, so it makes sense that the Eagles would maybe be interested in drafting a running back later. That said, like I've said before, I like the Dillon signing and think it very well could pay off big time, so we'll see what happens. And speaking of A.J. Dillon, some recent comments of his have actually come to light regarding his first impressions of Big Dom, with him saying that he's got some aura about him and he's the godfather of Philly. And, you know, there's not much to break down here, but I gotta say, shout out to Big Dom. He definitely does have some aura about him, and let's not forget how important he is to this team and organization. I mean, all the guys clearly love him, whether it be coaches, players, or the front office, and we all saw what happened when he was suspended and not on the sideline towards the end of 2023. It was the worst collapse in Eagles history, and not saying it was all because of that, but, you know, still. And also, let's not forget about what A.J. Brown said about Dom earlier this offseason, being that he's the guy that holds the whole team together. I mean, it may not get all the headlines, but Big Dom's importance to this team cannot be understated, so again, shout out to him. Moving on though, and back to one of the Eagles' other free agents, a guy who I feel very similar to A.J. Dillon about is edge rusher Joshua Uche. As like Dillon, there's plenty of reasons to be skeptical about him, but best case scenario, he could end up playing really well on a cheap contract and turn out to be an absolute steal for the Birds. And Ben Cooper of PFF seems to agree with that, as he recently wrote an article listing each team's free agent signing with the highest upside, and for the Birds, he listed Uche, saying, quote, "Leave it to the Eagles to acquire a defensive lineman with star power for pennies on the dollar." In 2022, Uche established himself as one of the league's most promising edge rushers after racking up 56 quarterback pressures, tied for 20th, including 12 sacks, tied for 12th. A less productive 2023 campaign and a slow start to 2024 facilitated Uche's exit via a trade to the Chiefs before last season's deadline. While the former second-rounder has been in something of a rut, the Eagles will put him in a position to succeed, as they often do with their young defensive linemen. And this is pretty much exactly what I've been saying ever since the Birds signed Uche, being that, you know, sure, he's inconsistent, but the talent and potential is clearly there after what we saw in 2022, and his pressure rate is still very high even since then, so given a chance to play in this Eagles defense led by Vic Fangio, alongside guys like Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, and just all the other stars at all three levels they have, while also practicing against guys like Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata, that's only going to make him better and give him more chances to produce and have another 2022-like season. And honestly, I think part of the reason that he's even here is because Vic Fangio probably sees something in him. So we'll see if he's able to get the most out of him. And speaking of Fangio, some comments he actually made about Jalen Hurts way back in 2023 when he was the defensive coordinator for the Dolphins and getting ready to face the Eagles have recently resurfaced, and they're pretty interesting. As in regards to Hurts, he said, quote, "He has no weaknesses. I told Howie way back in 2021 he had his quarterback." And that's obviously some very high praise coming from a guy who is pretty brutally honest all the time and is also, of course, the best defensive coordinator in football. So it's obviously awesome to hear, and it's even more awesome that both these guys were able to win their first Super Bowl together the very next season after Fangio said this. Oh, and also, when you see Jalen Hurts slander from some of these fans on social media or these talking heads on TV, just remember that the guys whose opinions on Hurts that should actually really hold some weight, like Vic Fangio, Tom Brady, or Kurt Warner, for example, are all overwhelmingly positive. Staying with Vic Fangio for a second, though, some more recent noise surrounding him could reveal that even bigger things may be coming for the Birds' scariest defender in 2025. And I'm talking about none other than defensive tackle Jalen Carter, who's already, of course, one of the best defenders in the league just 2 years into his career. He's due for a massive contract extension next offseason, and like I said, is already one of the scariest defensive linemen for opposing O-linemen to go up against. And based on some recent comments from one of Vic Fangio's former defensive tackles back from his Houston days in Seth Payne, Carter and the Birds' defense may get even scarier next season.
Vic Fangio probably made me an extra few $1 million because he just completely transformed me as a player.
In what way?
His scheme, he gives the defensive linemen so much freedom. If you know, he gives you these options, if you can handle it, to slant to your responsibility, stem all the time. He kind of gives you a rule book for when you can play more aggressively and when you need to be more of a two-gapper or a gap responsibility guy based on the coverages you play behind you. And it's stuff that I'd never been exposed or was even aware that it was possible as a defensive lineman. So, like, I'm always a guy that was always trying to really play my responsibilities and everything, and I probably wasn't as aggressive as I should have been. Vic's scheme gives you that license to be like, okay, no, on this play, you're just based on this formation with this coverage behind you, you're just going to hit it. And so it's cool to watch Jalen Carter, I think, do some of those things in Vic's scheme, because it allows you to be a conscientious player but also an aggressive player at the same time. So it kind of mixes and matches elements of the old school 3-4 but with just an aggressive 4-3 defense.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that Jalen Carter has benefited from the freedom and autonomy he has in Vic Fangio's scheme. And I also think there's no question that now, going into year 2 of that, now having that continuity, he's only going to get even better. And I mean, again, that's a terrifying thing for opposing offenses to think about, because Carter is already insanely good, and he's also probably the Birds' most important defensive player, in the sense that what he does helps everybody else out, whether it's his fellow linemen and getting after the quarterback just with all the attention he draws, or the linebackers and stopping the run with how he eats up blocks, or the secondary with the pressure that he puts on the quarterback. I mean, basically what I'm trying to say is, if Carter gets better, then the Eagles' entire defense should get better as well. And again, with another year in Vic Fangio's scheme, I think that's exactly what's going to happen. Moving on though, we also got some NFC East division news, as one of the Birds' division rivals has a new starting quarterback, at least before the draft, as the Giants just signed Russell Wilson to a 1-year deal worth up to $21 million and has $10.5 million in guaranteed money. And honestly, this is pretty funny to me. I mean, I actually don't think Russ was horrible last season, and on the contrary, I actually think that he had stretches of being pretty good, but in no way do I think he's going to be able to elevate this current Giants roster to being a playoff contender next year, nor is he a long-term solution for them at that position. So I'm definitely not worried about it, and, you know, obviously the draft still has yet to happen, and the Giants could take a quarterback, but I still just can't help but question their plan at quarterback right now moving forward. But you know, hey, what do you expect from the team and the GM who let Saquon Barkley walk for nothing, only for him to have a historic season and win the Super Bowl with a division rival the next year, and then you follow that up by paying Darius Slayton more money than Barkley got the offseason prior? I mean, it's pretty hilarious if you ask me. Oh, and so is the most recent rumor from Cleveland source Bruce Drennan, saying that he has inside sources saying that the Cowboys and Browns are in trade talks involving Dak Prescott. And that's just simply not true, considering that Dak not only has a no-trade clause, but if the Cowboys actually did trade Prescott and he agreed to it, they'd have to eat an impossibly high dead cap hit of almost $150 million according to Spot Track. So, safe to say, Dak is not going anywhere, and as an Eagles fan, that's fine by me. But now with all that being said, you guys know that I'm going to be continuing to cover all the news for the Eagles this entire offseason, so if you don't want to miss any of that, then make sure you guys subscribe and turn on notifications. That way you're notified instantly when I upload a video or go live. And also, while you're at it, make sure you drop a like as well to show some support, because it really does help me out a ton. See if we can try and get to at least 600 likes today. And also, leave a comment down below just regarding anything that I talked about in this video. How much better do you think Jalen Carter can get next season? And also, if you want to watch another Eagles video going over some more top 30 visits and other news, you can check this out right here. And now with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.